Guys, in this training, I'm going to be going through mastering our weekends, okay? How we can enjoy life without derailing our fat loss progress. So, weekends are where a lot of people lose momentum, not from a lack of motivation, not because they want to sabotage their progress on the weekend. It's often comes from a lack of structure and maybe a lack of understanding of what flexibility truly is, okay? So this guide is designed to create that freedom, but have freedom with those guardrails so that you can go out, you can enjoy meals, you can have drinks, and you can still make progress, okay? So why the weekends matter? If we're talking Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then that's 43% of your week. So that's going to have an impact on your overall outcomes, okay? The mathematics would tell you as such. Now, there's a few different people at the weekend. Some people who push forward at the weekend. They have strategic weekend choices that accelerate fat loss progress due to allowing that flexibility. So having a little bit more flexibility at the weekend, it's pre-planned and structured, which allows them to have that little bit, feel like they're having a little bit of a break, and which allows them their adherence to be sustained because it's not a massive restriction or restriction based type thing. They feel like everything is conducive towards their goal, and that's happy days. Everything's accounted for and balanced out through the week. Now, we have people who would stay stuck because poor planning and being reactive to situations causes you to spin your wheels or even worse, potentially go backwards, sabotaging your progress. And like I said, the last one would be some people completely undo their progress and then complain that they can't lose weight, complain that maybe the hormones or that there's something else at play, and it's not. It really isn't. It's the weekends, the impact that a bad weekend can have. You'll blow your calorie deficit without even knowing. Okay, and at the end of the day, losing body fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. It's that simple. Okay, so a one-off weekend absolutely will not ruin your progress, but 52 of them a year absolutely will. Now, it's important that we distinguish the difference between flexibility and a free for all, or flexibility and the binge purge cycle. Okay, so flexible dieting would be 80% nutrient dense foods, and then 20% of those calories for the day can come from anything else at all. As long as you hit your targets with the 80%, you can do whatever you want with the other 20%. Now, that doesn't mean that you sacrifice protein intake with the 80% or you sacrifice micronutrient intake with the 80%. That's You need to hit all that stuff. You need to earn that flexibility by ticking the boxes with the 80% in order to, if we're talking about truly doing what flexible dieting is, then this is what we need to be aware of. People who consume 60 grams of protein per day on the weekend, but then they say, oh, I've stuck to my calories. It's not the same. It's not the same thing because we've missed out in the micronutrients, we've missed out in the protein target, we've missed out on the standard that we're kind of holding ourselves to in order to see our the rate of progress that we're looking for. Okay, now it's also important to understand the trade-off as well. You could kind of consider flexibility and rates of progress on opposite ends of a balance or opposite ends of a scale, effectively. So we have to balance the books in some regard. Now, if you want more flexibility, then you're going to have to allow for a little bit of slower rate of progress. It's just that simple, okay? If you want to go a little bit quicker with it, well, then sure, it's going to be a little bit more restrictive and a little bit more structured. You can still have flexibility there, but it's going to be a little bit more disciplined. And whatever the outcome that you're looking for is, as long as you're fully aware of the choices that you're making and how that affects your long-term progress, yeah, I'm happy to have a little bit more flexibility and I'm happy for a little bit of slow progress. That's fine. But you can't want the flexibility, and in a realistic sense, you can't want the flexibility and want that accelerated rate of progress. They don't play well with each other. They're not the same thing. Okay, you just have to be aware that they are on opposite sides. And once you can manage your expectations about what your inputs are going to give you back in terms of outputs, then it's absolutely fine from that point onwards. Like I will communicate to you with complete transparency. If we continue doing this is our likely outcomes. Because we're collecting that data on a week to week basis, we can make a good estimation on what's going to happen. Okay. And then it's up to you. Am I happy with that or I'm not happy with that? Well, if I'm not happy with that, then maybe we need to rein some of this stuff in. Okay. So flexible dieting and binge purge cycling are not synonymous with each other. So this is where people make often make mistakes, okay, and often get confused, or maybe whether it's unknowingly or not. They were just making a few mistakes with this one here, and I'll explain it a little bit further. So when we talk banked calories, where do the banked calories come from? Okay, so we've probably heard of that 80-20 rule. It's like a off the cuff saying that you hear people, yeah, I'm living an 80-20 lifestyle. Then you look at it and it's like, well, 80-20 is 80% of your calories versus 20% of your calories. It's not what you yeah, I eat well most of the time and then my weekends are an absolute car crash. Like, that's not 80-20. You know what I mean? Like, if it's very easy to work out because it's mathematical. 80% of your calories versus 20% of your calories. Okay, like, so very easy to kind of to work that out from a 2000 calorie diet. What would that be? 1600 calories from nutritiously dense food, nutrient dense food. So making sure I'm hitting my protein intake, or definitely protein and the micronutrient intakes from that 80%. And then the 20% can come from anything: food, drink, ice cream, chocolate, sweets, lollies, whatever. The only thing that I would say is just be aware that those choices don't cause a subsequent binging behaviours at the back end of it. Okay, so that comes from a bit of an awareness thing. So it's very easy to work out those flexible calories and what that should look like. So what 80-20 is not, it's not scrambled eggs and toast for your breakfast and then a 5,000 calorie binge for the rest of the day. That's not 80-20, okay? It's not daily treats plus a massive weekend. Remember, we can bank those, 10 to 20% of our flexible calories throughout the week for the weekend, so long as we're still hitting our targets, our protein and our micronutrient targets from that 80%. We can absolutely bank those flexible calories towards the end of the week. For women, it's a little bit harder because they're on less calories, so usually it's maybe 10% for women. But we can do that. And then we can have a bit more indulgence on the weekend, but we can't do it daily and on the weekend as well. Think about it like in terms of a bank balance. We've only got to spend what we have available. Okay, so if rather than 2,000 calories, think about it as $2,000 per day, or $200 per day might be a little bit easier. So if you've only got $200 per day to play with, you can't buy something for $250. Okay, if you want to buy something for $250, you're going to have to save $50 from today, take it to tomorrow, and then you can go and get it. I hope that makes a little bit of sense and how we would kind of account for it. Okay. So then if we look at banking calories on 2,000 calories per day, let's if we're calling it 20%, that would be 2,000 calories saved over 5 days. So that means you've got an extra 2,000 calories for the weekend, which means 3,000 calories on a Saturday and 3,000 calories on a Sunday. Now, if we think about typical things that people would have as an indulgence, a full pizza, which I could inhale quite easily, is 2,500 calories. You're maybe going to wash that down with a few glasses of wine, maybe a wee dessert as well. We could blow 3,500-4,000 calories out the water quite easily, okay? So how would I bank calories effectively? I would save 200 to 400 calories each day through strategic adjustments. So, I could eliminate some snacks or some liquid calories, coffees out and things like that quite easily. Make sure I'm anchoring my protein, make sure I'm hitting my protein intake, I'm hitting my fibre intake, I'm getting all my fruits and veggies and all that type of stuff in there as well. And I would just make sure that the banking of the calories would come from a reduction in carbohydrates and or fats, okay? So the protein stays the same. Carbohydrates and fats is what you would play with in terms of to try and make allowance for that weekend. The only thing that we have to be aware of is what is the effect of that in our training performance. So that might work well for flexibility, for more food on the weekend. But if your training sucks because you're under fueling your training sessions, then again, that's something that you have to be aware of and manage your own expectations around that. So here's a strategy that you could work with at the weekend. Okay, so on a Saturday, if you're going to go out, you're having a little bit of an indulgence, you could push your breakfast out to your first meal to a little bit later in the day. A mid-morning breakfast, 9-10 o'clock breakfast, something like that. I would be absolutely starving by that point, but this is something that you could definitely do. And then you might skip lunch or have a real small snack, and then you're going to allow for some flexibility in the evening. A meal out or something like that, if you just kind of allow for 1,000 calories for that, then that would be an easy way to kind of make sure that you're going to have the calories available. So 1,000 calories between breakfast and lunch, for example, and then have 1,000 calories for, this is on a 2,000 calorie diet, of course, allow 1,000 calories for the evening, and you should be pretty well set and forget there. Even if you went over, even if you were in a deficit, say you're in a 500 calorie deficit, and you ate 2,500 calories that day instead of 2,000, all the damage is you're just not in a deficit for that day. you're still in a deficit for the week. So there's nothing that you really have to worry about there anyway. So if we look at a high protein lunch replacement that you could have here, Greek yogurt and berries, 400 grams of Greek yogurt and some frozen blueberries, like that's going to keep you pretty well full. We could do like a scrambled eggs with egg whites and eggs. Chicken and veggies, something like that. Like save yourself on the carbs. You might be about 250 calories there or something. Protein shake with some greens and maybe some healthy fats or whatever. We don't want to starve ourselves throughout the day, because then at the weekend, in the evening, that could turn into a binge. So we still want to make sure we're still fueling ourselves in some regard. Now, what I would say is on the weekend, have some form of training on the weekend. If you enjoy some flexibility at the weekend, make sure that you have some flexibility. Make sure that you're going to train there. So on the event day, say you're going out for a Saturday night or something like that, train on the Saturday morning. It's far more likely you're going to make positive decisions for the rest of that Saturday. And then your Saturday night, you're far less likely to just kick the arse out of it because you've made a positive decision in the morning. Or train the day after it. So if you're going out on a Saturday night, maybe you're not going to kick the arse out of it because you're like, right, okay, I'm going to have to train in the morning. So again, it keeps you a little bit accountable. Whatever you do, don't skip both of them. If the weekends is where you potentially undo your progress, then definitely do not skip both of these.